social, economic, and judicial. We address these topics ranging from violence and health, transnational crime and firearms trafficking, to the role of education, youth engagement, restorative justice, and the economic disparities driving crime. Following these discussions, ladies and gentlemen, CARICOM heads of government issued two pivotal declarations, one on crime and violence as a public health issue, and one entitled War and Guns. The Declaration on Crime and Violence as a Public Health Issue was subsequently distilled into a consolidated framework that charts short, medium, and long-term priorities to be operationalized at the community, national, and regional levels. The framework is structured around 5 pillars that we are committed to advancing. One, the governance architecture, aimed at strengthening our legislative frameworks to target transnational crime and provide interventions for vulnerable populations. Two, education and training, which seeks to equip our institution to build resilience in our communities, prevent untoward deviant behavior, and enhance forensic and intelligence capabilities. Three, multi-sectoral strategies that foster collaboration to counter corruption, ensure equitable access to rehabilitation, and support reintegration for those already in conflict with the law. Four, reduce access to assault weapons. That aims to achieve a measurable reduction in illegal firearms that perpetrate violence. Five, art, culture, and sport, harnessing the positive influence of creative outlets to promote resilience, counteract online violence, and empower our youth as partners in addressing crime. These commitments are not simply lofty goals. They are part of a deliberate path towards safety, peace, and justice in the region. Colleagues and delegates, we acknowledge that implementation is an ongoing journey. However, I am pleased to report that some important strides have been made to move these commitments from mere promises to some element of reality. Allow me to elaborate a bit. The firearms tracing capability of the region has been considerably enhanced through the expansion of the Regional Integration Ballistic Information Network, RIBIN. These broadening of the scope of RIBIN is enabling more CARICOM member states to access firearms tracking equipment and technologies. And this might be a good point for me to mention that in collaboration and in response to our appeal and I dare say demand to the United States to get involved in these actions, that there have been a number of US generated initiatives, not the least of which the crime gun development approach with United States authorities and the establishment of the illicit trafficking crime czar up north and the making of new legislation to allow federal agencies to treat with trans-state cross-border trafficking. These developments are helping us to slow the flow of arms to our territories and to identify the perpetrators and facilitators. And these came out of the original symposium and the constant solicitation that we have been making at the level of the administration in Washington, where we have found some receptive ears. So, ladies and gentlemen, colleagues and delegates, we can say that crucial model legislation has been developed I was pleased to report today that I have been advised, if you will accept that phrase, that the legislation to facilitate the harmonization of laws across the community have notably facilitated the completion of the template legislation for the CARICOM arrest warrant bill. I am particularly pleased to hear that we are there. Our little criminal punks must now know that every CARICOM territory, the law applies to them equally with respect, well, as soon as we implement the laws, that with respect to warrants for their restraint, apprehension, in anticipation of successful prosecution, that there are no safe harbors in any of our CARICOM territories. It has been long in coming, and I want to congratulate the legal team for being able to report. I hope I'm reporting accurately. I see the SG is nodding their head, so I take it to mean that I have reported accurately on that. And we would want to have that implemented as quickly as possible. With respect to the advanced passenger information and passenger API and passenger name record PNR bill, both of which provide a foundation for efficient cross-border cooperation. I understand that significant progress has been made there, or completion can be announced in anticipation of the work that we will do with those developments. These are tools that will facilitate law enforcement in a very efficient way and allow law enforcement to have a little bit of an upper hand on those who plan crime against our population. Steps have also been taken to strengthen intelligence and information sharing across borders, thereby enabling law enforcement to investigate, apprehend, and prosecute criminal actors with greater efficiency. We can't do too much of that. We need to do much more of that. And one thing I can add here is that our police management leadership need to cooperate and collaborate across our Caribbean territories, identifying known bad actors before they execute their plan against us, so that the police can have a more effective response against those who choose crime as a way of life and as a business for profit. A Caribbean gang database has been established at the CARICOM Impacts as an important resource for law enforcement agencies across the region. Information is strength in matters of this nature. Research initiatives have been undertaken to facilitate more informed policy making. One such initiative is the Pathway to Policy. That's a project which seeks to guide regional policy on firearms trafficking and violence by integrating public health perspectives and security responses. CARICOM Impacts has also conducted consultations to assess gaps in national and regional mechanisms to counter corruption and illicit finance, ensuring that we are evolving our approaches to meet current security challenges. These actions, alongside and awareness initiatives, underscore our commitment to a safer Caribbean, free of the menace of the rampant violence which we are responding to, one where our people feel protected, supported, and empowered. Ladies and gentlemen, I believe that the second symposium comes at an opportune time, allowing us to assess our progress, address the gaps, and tackle new dimensions of crime. For the rest of today, we'll engage in topics critical to our continued efforts: the transnational nature of gangs in the Caribbean, the role of cultural influences, the impact of corruption on law enforcement, the relationship between illiteracy and crime, offender management, and gender-based violence. Each of these issues demands concerted collective attention if we are to truly transform the realities facing our societies. Colleagues, friends, and fellow citizens, as we move forward, let us renew our resolve. Together, we have the knowledge, the partnership, and the determination to drive meaningful change. By involving every sector of society, engaging our communities, and working with our young people, we can indeed forge a safer and more resilient Caribbean. As Frantz Fanon said, and I quote, the more the people understand, the more watchful they become. And the more they come to realize that finally everything depends on them and their salvation lies in their own cohesion, in the true understanding of their interests, and in knowing who their real enemies are, unquote. Today, may our understanding of our interests and our power, my colleague heads and the delegates, embolden us to work together to snuff out the embers that fuel crime and violence in our region, and in so doing, secure the future of our paradise. A Caribbean that is defined by peace, opportunity, and enduring spirit of our people, and our policing that is fit for purpose and not playing catch up with the criminal perpetrators. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, as I look forward to a successful day of deliberation.
Thank you very much, Prime Minister Rowley. All right, I now invite His Excellency Dr. Mohammed Irfan Ali to address us. Thank you.
Distinguished colleagues, cabinet members, important leaders in the healthcare sector, education, and other sectors. First of all, allow me to congratulate Prime Minister Rowley and Prime Minister Motley on the enormous work they have been coordinating in relation to crime and all the consequential effects of crime in our society and in our resource allocation. But just to give some amount of context as to the scale of the problem, because one looking in from the outside may say we are such small societies in population size, there may not be a problem that is of a scale or magnitude that deserve particular attention and intervention. So I think it's important for us to have an understanding of the scale of this issue. In 2017, the IMF found that crime, and particularly violent crime, is pervasive in the Caribbean and impose a serious economic and social burden on countries in the region. And we know that the first sector that is affected by economic and social burden is the healthcare sector. Because if we can't take care of the social needs of our citizens, or we have to divert resources for social needs and other needs, then it will affect their health and affect investment in health. The study found that an average of 40% of the Caribbean population identifies crime and security-related issues as the overarching problem facing their countries, even more so than poverty and inequality. 40% of the population identified crime as the overarching issue, even more than poverty and inequality. In a more recent survey, the Inter-American Development Bank found that direct cost of crime and violence on Latin America and the Caribbean reached 3.44% of the region's gross domestic product in 2022. 3.44% of the region's gross domestic product in 2022. Now, for us to understand from a budgetary perspective what this means, it's very simple. This means that 80%, it would have cost 80% of the entire allocation for education in the region. Just imagine if we did not have this impact. We could have all increased our budgetary allocation in the region by 80%. And it's worse for social services. It is double that. The impact is double that for social services, which is directly connected to health. So the issue here is further complicated because on an average, states within the region are spending up to 31% of their expenditure directly and indirectly on crime fighting and crime prevention. And the loss of human capital, the loss of investment on the development of human capital is 22%. Those are the numbers that outline statistically the problem that we are confronted with. If we take a deeper dive into some of the important subsectors of crime, gender-based violence, and that is why in addressing gender-based violence, we have to address the entire ecosystem. Now, it is not popular when we speak about how we address this through culture, how we address this through music, how we address this through behavior. Leaders sometimes are not found to be popular when they address the entire ecosystem. But we have to understand that it's the ecosystem that can solve or continue to accelerate the problems that we face, especially on issues like gender-based violence. Now, what is the consequence of this? Not only the economic issues, the cultural and social issues, but physical and sexual, reproductive, psychological, and behavioral suicide and other fatal consequences. According to the UN, 46% of women in the Caribbean have experienced at least one act of violence. 46%. That is the scale of problem. That is the scale of the problem. So when you're looking at a society that you have 46% impact, you're speaking about something that is systemic, something that is endemic, something that is structural, something that is highly integrated into the behavioral cycle of people in the region. So that is how deep we have to go, and that is why what Prime Minister Rowley and the heads and Prime Minister Motley have suggested is so critical, because we can't address this without having health, public health, and education as part of the solution. Because if we are to solve it from a systemic perspective, then we must start from the primary school. Now, we must start. So as we incorporate public health in primary school, we have to incorporate these issues also. So we have a whole generation coming up with a different perspective of life and how we deal with these issues. The second is crimes of gain, which is robbery, theft, home invasion, narcotics, the street level. Now, a recent study, and give you an example here, the causes are poverty, inequality, unemployment, of course, dysfunctional homes. And what we found was that 85% of violent crime are committed by males. Young men falling behind in education and job. And this has a direct linkage. If we take a deeper dive, we would see that in Guyana, I'll give you one example, 66% of students at the University of Guyana are now women. 66% of the total intake at the University of Guyana are women. And when you look at the scholarship program, more than 70% of the total scholarships available, which is in the last 4 years is more than 30,000, are taken up by women. The consequential effect is that 85% of the violent crime are committed by our male. So where is their attention being directed to? Definitely not education here, because the stats is not demonstrating that. So that is the depth of the problem that we're faced with. The third is trafficking in person, narcotics, small arms, and light weapons. And we all have more complex problems depending on where we're located. Trinidad and Tobago and Guyana, we have not only illegal weapons coming in, which we've spoken about, but we have also the movement of gangs with the complexities around us in Trinidad and Tobago and in Guyana, because you're closely connected to large population like Venezuela. We have reallocated, but Suriname too. We have had to reallocate scarce resources to fight international narcotics cartel that use our airspace. So for us, it's beyond the guns coming in. Is having to address the multi-dimensional international coalition of criminal network. And that is for the whole region, but at scale, when you have these bigger borders. And at scale, the impact of 10 guns coming into Barbados, Antigua, St. Lucia is equivalent to 10 million guns coming into larger economies, larger population base. Because the damage that 10 high-powered weapon can do is equivalent on a per capita basis. So we definitely have a problem at scale. The money laundering and other financial crimes, I think that in this area, the region has been more integrated in our approach. One of the things we have seen in the past is that there was a silo type of approach to it, and every ministry is invited and they go differently to the symposium. But now we see more national task force integrated into a regional task force, and we are seeing results in this area. So I want to say that based on the stats and the problem before us, and I'll give one more example here in Guyana. Between 2019 and 2024, to address security, we have had to increase our allocation on the security budget by 154%. 154% between 2019 to 2024. And it's not only the increase of 154%, it's also an increase of a larger budget. So the actual impact is much higher than the percentage increase. Now imagine if we could have used 70% of that and reallocated to healthcare or public health. So this is a nexus and the connection that we have to look at. I'm not even talking about the emotional trauma, the emotional distress, the consequential effect on mental health, the cost for mental health, because if we have stronger families, we'll have better health care. If we have a stronger communities, we'll have better public health system. Crime weakens families and weakens community and weakens our public infrastructure and our public health care system. So I would conclude here by once again thanking and applauding my colleagues, both Prime Minister Rowley and Motley, for their enormous leadership. I don't know if this is the first time we have such an integrated group, but definitely in my short years here at the leadership level, we have had such an integrated group of policymakers, technocrats, and participants. Maybe in the future, we would even see persons who have been rehabilitated uh, as part of the discussion so they can give their perspective also, and that would add uh, full variety to how we address the issue. But I want to thank my colleagues for the enormous work and the CARICOM Secretariat. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much, President Ali. Uh, we will not have an address by Prime Minister Motley as I had originally indicated. So this brings the curtains down on our opening session. I want to thank both Dr. Rowley and Dr. Ali for the enormous work that they've done, not just in terms of the information they've shared with you, but in terms of the actualization of and implementation of many of the region-wide initiatives to combat crime, violence, and obviously to begin to put in place the necessary institutional and policy initiatives for us to treat this as a public health issue so that we could all make the lives of our citizens within the community safer. I think we will all agree that, in fact, one of the first features of a state is the ability to protect its citizens. So obviously, public safety is of paramount importance for all of us within the CARICOM community. So thank you very much to both heads. I want to thank the CARICOM Secretariat as well, and this concludes the opening session. Members of the media, thank you very much for joining us. Members of the diplomatic corps who are here with us this morning, thank you as well for coming. Thank you for your partnership and your support in this important initiative. Thank you.